Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us. I'm Julie Kruger of Kruger Immigration Law, and today we're doing a Facebook Live video to talk about the immigrant visa process. So I'm super excited to be here with you all, and if you have questions about the immigrant visa process, post them in the comments and we'll be answering them live today during this event. So what we're going to do first, we're going to talk about the immigrant visa process, give kind of a brief overview of it. I'm going to answer some of the frequently asked questions that we get in our office about the immigrant visa process, and then I'm going to answer any questions that you have that you can post in the comments. And if you're watching this video after it's been posted live, you can always follow up with us at our office. You can call us at 716-393-9878, or you can check out our website at www.krugerimmigrationlaw.com. We'd be happy to speak with you and do a free case evaluation. We do offer a free case evaluation, so we'd be happy to speak with you about that. So the immigrant visa process, basically, and we're going to talk specifically about the family immigration process today. So a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident of the United States can sponsor a relative through the family immigration process. And it's a U.S. citizen. The family members that they can sponsor are a parent, a spouse, or a child who's under the age of 21, or a brother or a sister. And the petitioner can be a parent, a spouse, a child over 21, or a brother or sister of a U.S. citizen. And then the permanent resident of the United States can also sponsor a spouse or children, but not parents or brothers or sisters. So the first step of the process is that the U.S. citizen or permanent resident card holder, the permanent resident card holder can also be called a green card holder. U.S. citizen or permanent resident files a petition for alien relative with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. That's the form I-130. And the purpose of that form is to show that the petitioner is a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident of the United States, that the identity of the beneficiary, and the relationship between the petitioner and the beneficiary. And the petitioner is going to be the U.S. citizen or green card holder, and the beneficiary is going to be the foreign national. So, so the petitioner is going to demonstrate that they're a U.S. citizen by submitting a copy of either a U.S. passport, biographic page of a U.S. passport, certificate of citizenship, certificate of naturalization, consular report of birth abroad, or their birth certificate showing that they were born in the United States. Green card holder is going to submit a copy of the front and back of their green card. To establish the identity of the beneficiary, the beneficiary is going to submit their birth certificate, which is their long form birth certificate. Need to show your name, your date and place of birth, and both parents' names. So for our Canadian citizens, it's not the small wallet-sized birth certificate that you have maybe you need the long form birth certificate with both parents' names on it. So if you don't have that, you'll need to order that. And then you want to establish the relationship between the petitioner and beneficiary. For spouses, that's a copy of the marriage certificate, and then proof that you have a real relationship, not just for immigration purposes. For example, birth certificates of children that you have together, evidence that you have a shared residence, evidence that you have shared finances, personal statements explaining how you met, how you fell in love, wedding photos, letters that you've written to each other, all sorts of things like that to show that this is a real relationship. For parents and children, you want to show birth certificate with the child showing the parent's name on it. If it's a father and child relationship, you also want to show the marriage certificate. And for brothers and sisters, you want to show both certificates showing same parents' names on them. Along with the petition for alien relative, that supporting documentation, you're going to submit a couple of forms. That's the form I-130, the petition for alien relative, and the I-130A, which is the supplemental information for the beneficiary. The petition for the I-130, the petition for alien relative, that gets signed by the petitioner. And the I-130A is signed by the beneficiary if they're in the United States. If they're living outside the United States, they're not required to sign that form. And if you're working with an attorney, the attorney also submits a Form D-28, the notice of entrance, the appearance of the attorney, showing that the attorney has prepared those forms and working with the clients on that petition. So that gets all packaged up, all the evidence, all the forms and documentation gets submitted to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, all in one package together. You're also going to submit two passport-style photographs of the petitioner and the beneficiary, if the beneficiary is living in the United States. And you're going to submit the filing fee check or money order. Currently, the filing fee for the petition for alien relatives is $535, and it needs to be U.S. dollars drawn on a U.S. bank, and it can be a check or a money order. Once that gets submitted, the average processing time that we see for that is about 6 to 8 months for the petition for alien relative. And there's no specific length of time that the petitioner and the beneficiary need to be married before they can submit that petition. That can be submitted at any time. It can be, you can get married and mail out your petition that day, but they do have to be married before it's submitted. There is a fiancé process that's a totally different process. We're talking specifically about the immigrant visa process today. So once USCIS has approved that petition, they will send the approved petition. They'll send you an approval notice, and then they send the approved notice to the approved petition to the Department of State, where the beneficiary then becomes the applicant and goes through the immigrant visa process. So first, it takes about, I would say, an average of 30 to 60 days for USCIS to send the approved petition to the Department of State, and then the Department of State to issue their case creation. Typically, it's an email these days for most embassies and consulates around the world. You get an email letting you know your case number, your invoice ID number, and that is how you're going to track your case throughout the immigrant visa process. So during that process, the applicant's then going to submit a DS-260, the immigrant visa application, and submit their supporting documentation to show that they're eligible for permanent residence in the United States, that they don't have certain criminal convictions or immigration violations, that they meet the affidavit of support requirements, that the petitioner is domiciled in the United States. So they submit the DS-260, the immigrant visa application. That's an online application. And their supporting documentation can be uploaded to the Department of State's website, assuming this is online processing. Some of the embassies and consulates do not yet have online processing. But for Montreal, which processes all of the immigrant visas for Canada, it is online processing. And so you submit your DS-260, your supporting documentation, which is going to be your copy of your biographic page of your passport, a police certificate, your affidavit of support showing that your petitioner can sponsor you, can support you, and you're not going to become a public charge in the United States. Your birth certificate, again, showing the documentation and the relationship between you and your petitioner. The National Visa Center is going to review that documentation, and if everything looks good, they're going to schedule you for an interview at the embassy or consulate nearest to you. Your case gets sent to the embassy or consulate. You then go to your interview there. You have an interview with a consular officer, and if you are approved at the immigrant visa interview, they'll keep your passport, and they will courier your passport back to you with the immigrant visa stamped in it. You then enter the United States as an immigrant, and during the validity period of that visa, and that's important to note, how long is the visa valid for? Because you do need to make sure that you're entering while that immigrant visa is valid. At the border, you're going to take the package that they sent with you, present that to the border officers, and you're going to pay a $220 filing fee to process the green card before you enter the United States. And then Homeland Security is going to mail your permanent resident card to the address that you indicated you wanted it mailed to on your visa application. And you'll also be mailed a Social Security card from the Social Security Administration. That green card, that permanent resident card, that's your proof that you have the lawful permanent resident status. That's your right to live and work in the U.S. permanently. If you are getting your green card based on marriage and you have been married for less than 2 years at the time the green card is issued, you will get a 2-year green card that you'll have to file another application in the 90-day period before that 2-year green card expires. And then you'll be eligible for citizenship 3 years after you got the green card. If you're no longer residing in marital union with your spouse, then it'd be 5 years after you got the green card. Other categories other than spouse, it'll be 5 years after you get the green card that you'll be eligible to apply for U.S. citizenship. So that's kind of a brief overview of the immigrant visa process. Some of the frequently asked questions that we get in our office, especially from our Canadian clients who live close to the border and want to be able to continue to come in and out of the United States while their case is processing. Yes, the question is frequently, can you come in and visit your spouse while your case is processing? And the answer is yes. At the border, the officers, when you're coming in as a visitor to the United States, the border officers are questioning your immigrant intent, whether or not you're going to remain in the United States longer than you're supposed to. So if you have an immigrant visa petition pending for you, either that I-130 or the immigrant visa process, the officers are going to be able to see that in their computer. And they're going to be concerned that you do have immigrant intent. And it's going to be up to you to show them at that time that yes, long term you have immigrant intent, but on this day and occasion, you're coming in for, this specific reason, 3 days to visit your spouse over the weekend or a 2-week vacation to Disney World. And you're going to want to have a package of documentation with you to show that you maintain a residence, you maintain a job or other finances outside the United States, so they can feel confident that you do have non-immigrant intent. Another question is, are you eligible for a visa if you have a criminal conviction? And the answer is maybe. So, and that is something that if you have a criminal conviction, I would really strongly recommend that you speak with an immigration attorney before you begin this process, because it's going to be really important to know whether or not that's going to cause an ineligibility or inadmissibility is the immigration term, that's going to prevent you from getting a green card or make your process more complicated. So any kind of criminal arrest, history, any kind of immigration violation, that's something that you're going to need to disclose on your application during the immigrant visa process. You're going to need to provide documentation of that process, and you're going to need to answer questions about it at the interview, and it may or may not cause you an inadmissibility to the United States, so you're really going to want to talk with an attorney about that beforehand. And any kind of previous immigration violation, also something that you really want to disclose, and you want to talk to an immigration attorney before you start even the I-130 process, so you know how that's going to affect your case. That could include a previous visa denial, a previous deportation from the United States, a refusal at the border, a previous overstay in the United States. So that's something you're really going to want to talk through with an attorney before you get started on the process. If you do have a criminal conviction that bars you from entering the United States or getting a green card, or an immigration violation, there are waivers available. So it's even though it may make you inadmissible to the United States, there are things that you can talk with your attorney about to see whether or not you might qualify for a waiver of that ground of inadmissibility. So that's a frequently asked question that we get in our office. So for your interview, a few tips. You want to be organized with your documentation. You want to make sure you go through the requirements of what the kind of documentation you need to have at that interview with you really carefully before you go to the interview. You need original documentation, and you want to make sure that all of that, you have that available with you at the interview. If you don't have it at the interview, what will happen is they will give you something called a refusal worksheet, and the officer will list on the refusal worksheet all of the items that we're missing, and give you an opportunity to provide that documentation later. And you'll have up to 1 year to provide that documentation. So you can cure whatever the problem was that you didn't have the documentation at the interview, but of course that's going to cause a delay in the process. And sometimes, depending on the embassy or consulate, that could be a significant delay. So you really want to be prepared for that interview when you're scheduled the first time. And Shabana, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm not wearing my glasses today because of the glare, so Lisa, my assistant, is helping me read some of the comments in the background. So another thing for the interview that I would suggest is being dressed professionally, like you're going to a job interview or a religious service. You want to look like someone who we want to have as a member of the society in the United States. So the officer is going to be kind of evaluating you as a person during that interview. You want to be clean and neat, not under the influence of any drugs or alcohol during that interview, and dressed nicely. Look like this is really important to you and your family, as it most likely is. I would suggest mapping out your interview, mapping out how you're going to get to your interview and where you're going to go, where you're going to park, where the embassy is, making sure you've got money for parking beforehand, and making sure that you can have you can't have any food or drink in the embassy, no cell phones or any electronics of any kind, certainly no weapons, no guns, knives, nothing they could even vaguely think is a weapon, like a nail file. The process can vary depending on which country you're processing from, but the average processing time that we see for most embassies or consulates around the world, from the filing of the I-130 to the issuance of the immigrant visa, is going to be about 12 to 14 months. That's the average processing time that we are seeing here in for this process. That's what we see in our office. And for more specific questions on how it might affect your case, give our office a call at 716-393-9878. We'd be happy to discuss the process with you. Or you can submit an inquiry through our website, again, www.KrugerImmigrationLaw.com, and Kruger spelled Kruger. So thank you all so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed being here with you. Feel free again if you're interested in having a free case evaluation with our office, give us a call or send an inquiry through our website. We'd be happy to discuss the best strategy for you and your family. And have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you.